High in a tropical forest, an ant is about to do something it was never built to do. It leaves its trail, it climbs, higher than it has ever gone, away from the colony, away from the scent roads, away from every rule its body has ever followed, as if it were being called. Near midday, it stops on the underside of a leaf. It clamps its jaws down on a single vein, and then it simply waits. This ant is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. Something has been growing inside it for days, steering its legs, closing its jaws, walking it to a very specific place at a very specific height. And soon, that something will push a stalk out through the back of its head. This is the story of the most precise puppeteer on Earth, and it does not have a brain at all. To understand the puppeteer, you have to understand the stage. A tropical rainforest is not a peaceful place. It is a slow, silent war, fought mostly by things you never see. Spores drifting on the humid air, threads spreading under the bark, hunters that don't move and never blink. And among the hunters is a whole family with a single, chilling talent, turning living animals into gardens for the dead. We call them Cordyceps, hundreds of different species, and almost every one of them is a specialist. One evolved to hunt a certain ant, another a specific beetle, a moth, a spider, a cricket. They don't compete for one prey. Over millions of years, each has been handed its own victim and learned to unlock it like a key made of chemistry. Our story follows the most famous of them all. Its name is a mouthful, Cordyceps unilateralis, but the world knows it by a simpler title, the zombie ant fungus. And what it does to a carpenter ant is not a metaphor. It is a hijacking step by step of another creature's body, carried out by something with no eyes, no nerves, and no mind. Let's watch it happen. It begins with something almost too small to draw. A single spore drifts down through the green light and lands on the back of a foraging ant. Just one. No bite, no wound, no warning. The spore does something patient and terrible. It glues itself to the ant's outer shell, and it grows a microscopic drill. Slowly, using pressure and enzymes, it pushes through the armor, the same armor that shrugs off jaws and thorns, and slips inside. And the ant feels nothing. It keeps working. It follows the trail. It carries food. It grooms its sisters. For days it behaves like any healthy ant in the colony, while inside its body the invader is quietly spreading, sending out threads, feeding on the fat the ant stored to survive, mapping the machine it intends to drive. Here is the first horror of the Cordyceps. There is no dramatic moment of infection, no struggle. The victim doesn't fight back because the victim doesn't know. The fungus has learned to stay invisible for exactly as long as it needs to. It is not in a hurry. It has done this 100 million times. Now comes the part that overturned everything scientists thought they understood. For years, the assumption was obvious. If the fungus is controlling the ant's behavior, walking it, steering it, choosing when and where it climbs, then it must be attacking the brain. That's where behavior lives. That's where the strings would be pulled. So researchers took infected ants, sliced them into thousands of paper-thin sections, and rebuilt them in 3 dimensions to find the fungus wrapped around the brain. It wasn't there. The brain was almost untouched. Instead, the fungus had done something far stranger. It had spread through the ant's body and wrapped itself directly around the muscle fibers, the legs, the jaws. It built a kind of tubular scaffold of fungal cells, threading between the muscle bundles like a network of tiny hands, connected to each other but leaving the brain intact. Think about what that means. The fungus is not whispering commands to a mind. It is bypassing the mind entirely, reaching past the ant's brain and gripping the strings themselves. The ant may still be aware, trapped as a passenger, while its own legs carry it somewhere it would never choose to go. It is not persuasion, it is possession, done with chemistry, muscle by muscle. And where does the puppet go? Not just anywhere. This is the detail that makes the zombie ant fungus feel less like biology and more like a curse. When the fungus is ready, the ant is seized by a compulsion it cannot resist. It abandons the colony and begins to climb. Not to the top of the canopy. That would be too dry, too exposed. It stops at a very particular zone, often around a hand's height above the forest floor, where the temperature and the humidity are near perfect for a fungus to grow. And it doesn't stop there. The ant maneuvers to the underside of a leaf, orients its body, and locks its jaws onto a leaf vein in what scientists call the death grip. Then the strings are cut. The fungus shrinks the muscle fibers of the jaw and starves them of energy, so the mandibles can never open again. The lock is permanent. Even in death, the ant will not let go. There are reports that this final bite tends to happen around solar noon, as if the parasite were reading a clock the ant cannot see. A tiny corpse, hanging at exactly the right height, at exactly the right hour, aimed at exactly the right place. Nothing here is an accident. For a day or two, the leaf looks almost quiet. An ant, frozen, biting down on a vein. You could walk beneath it and never know. Then the fungus finishes what the ant was for. A stalk erupts from the back of the dead ant's head, dark, curved, growing toward the light like a horn. This is the fruiting body, the whole point of the hijacking. Everything before it, the infection, the climb, the perfect height, the death grip, existed only to place this single stalk in this single spot. Because directly below on the forest floor runs the foraging trail of the ant's own colony. And now the stalk begins to rain. It releases spores down onto the path where the ant sisters walk, day after day, in the thousands. Some will land on new hosts. The cycle will begin again. The corpse has become a weapon aimed at the family it came from. Scientists have even found these death grips fossilized in leaf veins tens of millions of years old. The same wound, the same bite, pressed into ancient forests long before there were humans to be horrified by it. This is not a new trick. It is one of the oldest and most refined pieces of manipulation life has ever produced. But nature does not let a killer go unanswered. The colony is not helpless. Ants are ruthless with the sick. When they detect a sister acting strangely, wandering, twitching, breaking the rules of the trail, healthy ants will carry the infected one far from the nest and abandon it, quarantining the threat before the spores can bloom over their home. A colony that fails to do this can be wiped out, so the fungus and the ant are locked in an arms race with no finish line. The ant sharpens its instinct to expel the sick. The fungus sharpens its ability to hide, to steer, to strike at the last possible moment. Neither ever wins. Both keep evolving. And the specialization runs deep. A Cordyceps that has spent millions of years learning one ant species usually can't infect its cousin a few valleys away. The key only fits one lock. That is exactly why the forest isn't overrun. Every one of these puppeteers is trapped inside a single, narrow relationship with a single kind of victim. At least, that used to be the rule. Recently, researchers documented a lineage that appears to have partly jumped to a second ant host. A crack in a wall everyone assumed was solid. In the endless war under the leaves, even the rules are starting to bend. Now leave the tropics and climb far higher to the roof of the world. On the Tibetan Plateau, 3 miles up where the air runs thin, a cousin of our fungus hunts a different victim, the caterpillar of a ghost moth buried in the cold soil. The fungus grows through the living caterpillar, mummifies it from the inside, and in spring pushes a thin, dark finger up out of the ground, out of the top of the dead caterpillar's head. For centuries, people have crawled across those slopes on hands and knees, searching for that tiny finger poking through the dirt. Because this fungus is worth a fortune. They call it Yartsa Gunbu, summer grass, winter worm. In traditional Chinese medicine, it has been prized for hundreds of years, and today it is one of the most expensive natural substances on the planet. At its peak, the finest grade has sold for more than its weight in gold. Whole mountain economies now rise and fall on the harvest of a parasite that kills insects. Here is the strange symmetry. In the forest, the fungus turns an ant into a slave. On the plateau, the same family of fungus turns thousands of humans into a workforce, sending them up the mountains every spring, chasing a dead caterpillar worth thousands of dollars a pound. The puppeteer's reach is longer than anyone expected. Which leaves the question everyone really wants to ask. If this fungus can hijack an ant so completely, could it ever come for us? You have probably seen the fictional version. A warming world, a mutated cordyceps, a species of zombie people. It makes for unforgettable television. But the science is reassuring, and it comes down to something simple: heat. These fungi thrive in a narrow, cool band, roughly the temperature of a shaded rainforest floor. Your body runs at nearly 100 degrees Fahrenheit, a furnace most of them simply cannot survive in. And remember the specialization. A cordyceps struggles even to jump from one ant to a slightly different ant. The leap to a human across 100 million years of fine-tuning and a wall of body heat isn't a small step. It's science fiction. In my opinion, though, the scariest thing about the cordyceps was never the fantasy of a human outbreak. It's the reminder of how little free will some animals actually have. How a creature with no brain can reach inside a creature that has one and drive it like a machine, purely through chemistry. We like to imagine the mind as the command center, untouchable. The zombie ant is proof that behavior can be seized from the outside without ever touching the mind at all. So the next time you walk through a forest, look up at the undersides of the leaves. Somewhere above you, an ant may be hanging in a perfect death grip at a perfect height waiting for noon. A puppet placed there by a puppeteer with no eyes, no nerves, and no mind. That has been perfecting this quiet art for longer than our species has existed. Nature doesn't need monsters, it has cordyceps. If this rewired the way you see the forest floor, stay with us. Because the next creature we draw is even harder to believe. Until then, keep wondering.